You are sitting in a quiet room. Nothing is wrong, nothing is coming. And yet, somewhere in the back of your mind, something is watching. You feel it when you walk to your car at night. You feel it in a silent house when a floorboard creaks. You feel it at 3 a.m. when you wake up for no reason and your heart is already beating fast. You didn't choose that feeling. You didn't summon it. It arrived on its own, uninvited, ancient. And the reason it showed up has almost nothing to do with your life right now. Your brain still thinks you're being hunted, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech. At the neurological level, your threat detection system was built for a world that no longer exists, a world of open savanna, sparse firelight, and predators with teeth longer than your fingers. That world is gone, but the machinery it built inside you is still running. The part of your brain responsible for this is called the amygdala. It sits deep inside your temporal lobe, roughly the size and shape of an almond, and it has one job above everything else: keep you alive. It does this by scanning everything, every sound, every shadow that lingers a half second too long. It does not wait for proof. It reacts first and asks questions later. And here is the thing neuroscientists like Joseph LeDoux spent decades documenting. The amygdala receives sensory signals before your conscious mind does. Before you think, it has already decided whether you are in danger. LeDoux called this the low road. Your eyes see a shape in the dark. Before that information reaches your cortex, the thinking part of your brain, it has already passed through the amygdala, which has already triggered a stress response. By the time you consciously register that the shape is just a coat on a chair, your heart is already beating faster. Your palms are already slightly damp. Your body prepared for an attack that was never coming, and it did all of this in under a quarter of a second. Think about what that means. Your fear is not slow. Your fear is faster than your thoughts. This system did not evolve to be accurate. It evolved to be fast. And it evolved during a period in human prehistory when the cost of a false alarm was almost nothing. A few seconds of adrenaline, a raised heartbeat, a scan of the trees, but the cost of missing a real threat was death. This asymmetry shaped everything. Natural selection favored the anxious. The ones who heard a rustle in the grass and froze survived longer than the ones who shrugged and kept walking. The ones who startled at shadows passed on their genes. You are descended from the most paranoid survivors on the planet. Researcher Arne Oman at the Karolinska Institute spent years testing this directly. In a series of experiments, he showed people a rapid series of images. Most were neutral, some were threatening, and found that humans detect threatening stimuli faster than neutral ones, even when those images are shown so briefly that subjects cannot consciously register them. The brain was flagging danger before awareness had a chance to form. The fear came first, the knowledge came second. And the fears that activated fastest were not random. Snakes, spiders, angry faces, heights, dark enclosed spaces. Oman found that these specific stimuli triggered threat responses far more efficiently than modern dangers, like guns or speeding cars or electrical outlets, even though those modern things kill orders of magnitude more people every year. Your brain is not calibrated to the world you live in now. It is calibrated to the world your ancestors lived in 200,000 years ago. This is why you flinch at a garden hose that looks like a snake, but do not flinch when you walk past a fast food restaurant serving food that could shorten your life by a decade. The slow, invisible threats register almost nothing. The ancient, visible ones still trip every wire. Now, consider what happens when this system runs continuously, when the threat never fully resolves. Chronic stress is what happens when the amygdala keeps firing without a clear predator to run from. Your ancestors' bodies were designed to spike, respond, and recover. The threat arrives, the stress hormones flood your system, you run or fight or freeze. The threat passes, your body returns to baseline. That cycle had a beginning and an end. But in modern life, the threats do not end. A difficult boss, financial pressure, a city that never goes quiet, a social media feed engineered to make your brain read human conflict all day long. There is no moment when your amygdala gets to stand down, look around the empty savanna, and register that the danger has passed. Robert Sapolsky at Stanford has argued that humans may be uniquely capable of suffering precisely because we can sustain psychological stress responses indefinitely. A zebra being chased by a lion will spike cortisol and adrenaline, and the moment it escapes, those levels drop back to normal. But a human being who is worried about money will sustain that stress response for weeks, months, years. Not because a predator is present, but because the brain cannot distinguish between a lion at the watering hole and a debt you cannot pay. The stress machinery does not care about the source. It fires all the same. This is not a flaw. At least it was not designed as one. In the ancestral environment, a threat that loomed on the horizon was almost always physical and almost always resolvable. You escaped it or you didn't. The capacity to hold stress over time may have helped your ancestors prepare, plan, stay vigilant through a long winter when food was scarce and the darkness was genuinely dangerous. But that same capacity, dropped into a 21st century information environment, becomes something else entirely. Your brain is running ancient threat software on a world it was never designed to parse. And it goes even deeper than stress. Consider how you read other people. Your amygdala is extraordinarily sensitive to faces, particularly angry faces, and particularly the faces of people who look unfamiliar. Research by psychologist Susan Fiske at Princeton found that when people see members of an outgroup, people perceived as different in some meaningful way, the amygdala fires more intensely than it does for people they identify with. This is not racism as a cultural product, though culture absolutely amplifies it. This is a much older, much more primitive calculation. In a small band of hunter-gatherers on an open plain, an unfamiliar face almost certainly meant danger. Strangers were rarely friends. They were competition for food, for mates, for territory. Your brain flagged them as threats before you had a chance to know them. You carry that ancient calculus everywhere you go, into every elevator, every subway car, every room full of strangers. Your amygdala is running its old familiar algorithm on every face it scans, asking one question above all others: do I know you, or are you a threat? Most of the time, this misfires. Most strangers are not threats. Most dark rooms are not hiding anything. Most sounds in the night are just the house settling. But the system does not know that. It does not update easily. It was never built to update. It was built to assume the worst and be wrong 1,000 times before it was right once, because that one time it was right kept you alive. Here is where it becomes genuinely strange. You cannot turn this system off. You can dampen it, train it, reroute it with enough sustained effort and the right environments. Meditation, as researcher Sara Lazar at Harvard showed, can literally reduce the density of gray matter in the amygdala after several weeks of consistent practice. Therapy that targets threat appraisal, cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure therapy can rewire how the brain evaluates certain stimuli over time. Exercise reduces baseline cortisol. Consistent social connection tells the nervous system that the tribe is intact, that the night is safe, that there is no predator just outside the firelight. But you cannot reason your way out of a threat response in the moment it's firing. You cannot think fast enough because the system is not using the part of your brain that thinks. It is using something much older, much faster, and much harder to argue with. What you can do is understand what is happening, that the spike of anxiety you feel walking alone at night is not a warning from the present. It's an echo from a past so distant you cannot imagine it. A past in which your ancestors walked in genuine darkness with genuine predators and survived because some part of their biology refused to let its guard down. That refusal is still alive inside you. You carry it like a piece of ancient survival code that never got updated. Tonight, when you lie awake at 3 a.m. and your mind starts reaching for reasons to be afraid, remember that your brain did not learn this behavior from your life. It inherited it from 100,000 years of nights that were not safe. from ancestors who watched the fire carefully and startled at every sound and made it through until morning. That anxiety is not a malfunction. It's a message from people you will never meet, from a world you will never see, passing through you like a signal that still hasn't found its destination. You are safe now, but your brain does not know that yet.